I rented this house purely by chance. I was moving from Iowa City. It was a hot summer. I didn't have much money, but I wanted some peace and quiet. I found the house on a website like Craigslist. It was small, white, with a creaky porch, a typical early 20th century house. Old but well maintained. The neighborhood was Willits, a small town where everyone knows each other. The owner, an elderly woman, told me on the phone that the house hadn't been rented out in a long time, and if I took it for a year, she would give me a big discount. That suited me fine. I arrived in the evening, the smell of old wood, silence, the sound of crickets. Inside, old furniture, a grand piano, wooden floors. The house seemed frozen in time. On the wall, yellowed photos of a family with 6 children. I thought that the owner had simply left everything as it was. I didn't know where I had moved into. The first few days were quiet. I worked remotely, walked around the city, drank coffee at a local coffee shop. The house seemed a little alive. The doors creaked, the floors cracked from the heat. But that's normal. Old houses behave like that. But on the 4th day, something strange happened. Around midnight, I heard something rustling in the hallway. It sounded like someone walking barefoot across the floor. I was sitting on the sofa watching a movie on my laptop. The sound was so distinct that I paused the movie. And then there was silence. I thought that the silence was causing me to hear noises in my ears. An old house, nighttime, imagination. I dismissed it. The next morning, I found a child's toy on the floor in the hallway. It was wooden. It looked old, handmade. A little man with a hammer. I didn't touch it. I just stood there and looked at it. I was sure it hadn't been there yesterday. A week later, I began to notice strange things in my routine. Everything was happening according to schedule, but not mine. Every night at 11:58 p.m., I heard a click, as if someone was turning off the lights, always at exactly the same time. But the lights in the house continued to shine. In the kitchen in the mornings, I sometimes smelled scrambled eggs, fried with onions, very distinct, as if someone had just taken the pan off the stove. I even looked under the lid of the pan once. It was warm. I no longer thought it was just the wind. I began to understand. This house remembers someone else's life, and it seems to be repeating itself. The script, the routine, like a ghostly ritual in which I am not a participant. I am just an observer. Once I woke up with a strange feeling. Not fear, but presence. You know, sometimes you know for sure that someone is nearby, and not just standing there, but watching, right at you, for a long time, without a sound. I opened my eyes and saw a silhouette in the doorway. He was tall, male, just standing there. I blinked, and he disappeared. No sound, no shadow, nothing. I got up and turned on the light. The house was silent. Even the old staircase didn't creak when I walked on it. I couldn't sleep until morning. When I went to wash my face, I noticed that the mirror in the bathroom was fogged up, as if someone had just taken a shower. But I hadn't used the shower in 2 days. I had never been to the attic. The door was locked with a rusty bolt. I decided that since it wasn't in the way, it could stay closed. But one day, it was open, wide open, as if someone had just left. I didn't want to go up there, but part of me, sheer curiosity, couldn't resist. The attic was dark and dusty. I turned on my flashlight. Small objects in the corner, newspapers, children's shoes, $1, and an axe. A real old rusty axe with a wooden handle. I didn't touch it. I just looked at it. Why was it there? Who left it there? Why were there toys, photos, and an axe in the house? I started searching the internet. Willis, house, murders, and then it all came together. On June 8th, 1912, 8 people were murdered in this house, 6 children and 2 adults. They were hacked to death in their sleep with an axe. The perpetrator was never found. No one saw him. He didn't flee. He simply vanished, as if he had dissolved into the house. This house became a museum, then a residence again. Then it was closed again. And now it is rented out for pennies. I called the landlady. I didn't tell her what I had found. I asked her directly, "Is this the same house?" She looked at me silently. Then she said, "If you felt something, don't be afraid. They are just repeating what has already happened." I left the next day. A year later, I returned, only from the outside. I was driving by. I decided to stop. The house stood the same. White veranda, empty windows. I came closer. There were curtains on the window, and in one of the windows, someone was looking out. A silhouette, small, like a child. He stood completely still, motionless. Then he disappeared. I didn't go up to the porch. I just got back in the car and drove away. Sometimes houses don't become safe. They remain what they were on their most terrible day. And sometimes they remember it again and again. My name is John Harris. In 1992, I served in the Serious Crimes Division in New South Wales, Australia. I was 39 at the time. I wasn't the type to go home when my shift ended. Not because I was a hero, I just couldn't switch off. I have a wife and a son, but when you see what a person is capable of, part of you stays there. In the file, in the forest, in the interrogation room. It all started in the fall. It was a normal Monday. We had just returned from a business trip when we received a call from the forester in Belanglo. It's a dense forest, almost 100 kilometers from Sydney. It's known for its silence, sometimes even too much. The forester found something by the road. At first, he thought it was discarded animal carcasses. When he got closer, he realized it was people. More precisely, what was left of them. I took my partner and drove there. On the way, I thought about how people find all sorts of things in the forest. But what we saw, I still remember the smell. Earth, rot, metal. We found 2 girls. They were lying in a pit, as if they had been placed there on purpose. One had her hands tied, the other had been shot. Both were already skeletal, but their clothes remained. Backpacks, tourist backpacks, a wallet with German banknotes, passports. At that moment, I didn't know that this would be the beginning of the most terrifying case of my career. That we would encounter a man who knew how to kill and how to disappear. The next day, we questioned the locals. The forest is not a highway. Random people don't wander around there. But when we started checking the names in their passports, we got a chill down our spines. Caroline Clark and Joan Walters, both backpackers, tourists from Europe. They had disappeared almost a year earlier. And then it started. We dug up cases of missing persons, only foreigners, travelers, hitchhikers, couples who sent postcards home and then vanished. Everything started to fit together. Someone was hunting. We started combing the forest, square by square. I personally walked more than 50 kilometers, with dogs, with searchers, in the rain. And then one day, we found the third one. A skeleton, scraps of clothing, a medallion. It was Simone Schmidl. Her mother had sent inquiries to all the consulates. She was also hitchhiking, and also on this highway. And then, everything inside me broke. You see, it's not just about the corpses. They were lying. The same way. Tied up. Most likely tortured. This isn't some impulsive psychopath. This is someone who knows how to move. Someone who thinks this is his forest. Over the next 6 months, we found 4 more. First, a couple. Germans, then 2 more. Australians, locals, James and Deborah. All of them showed signs of torture. Some had been strangled. One had been stabbed and left in a position that looked like he was laughing. We felt a chill because it became clear that the killer wasn't just getting rid of the bodies. He was putting on a show. It was as if he wanted us to see it. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. I went home, sat down on the couch, and just stared at the wall. My wife came over. "The kids again?" she asked. I nodded. "Someone is playing with them, Mary, like dolls." We turned to behavioral analysis. We were told that the killer was a man. He drives a car. He was in the army. Methodical, manipulative. He likes power. And then, 4 months into the investigation, I thought for the first time, what if he's standing somewhere nearby, on the side of the road, watching us dig? One of the leads came unexpectedly. A local farmer remembered seeing a white SUV in the area. The driver was a strong man with short hair. He wasn't very talkative. He said he was looking for a trail to show the forest to his friends. We checked 92 vehicles. We settled on one that belonged to the Milatov family. And then we found the man, Ivan Milat, a former builder, a loner, previously convicted of assault. He lived in the suburbs, not far from the highway. And then the most important part began. A tourist from Britain, Paul Onions, reported that 2 years ago, he was picked up by a man in a similar car. The man was polite. And then he pulled out a gun. Paul managed to escape into the forest. He didn't even know the guy's name, but he recognized Milat from a photo. And that's when we understood everything. We couldn't arrest him without evidence. So we spent 2 months wiretapping, surveillance, and provocations. We planted clues and searched all his relatives' homes. Finally, we got a warrant. When we entered his house, he was in his bathrobe. Tea was brewing in the kitchen. He wasn't even surprised. We searched the bedroom. Under the floor, we found a rifle, a pistol, and knives. In the pantry, there was a tent with bloodstains. And in a box, there were foreign passports, films, and photos that did not belong to him. In one of the photos was a German girl, dead, judging by her posture. He remained silent the whole time, as if he had already lost. The trial lasted almost a year. I attended every hearing. Ivan denied everything. He smiled. Sometimes he looked at me, as if to say, "You won't prove anything anyway." But we proved it. 7 counts of murder, several attempts, life imprisonment. Now he has no one to hunt. He died in prison in 2019. But I still think about those guys. about their diary entries, about their letters to their parents, about the last photo of them standing by the highway with their thumbs up. Sometimes I drive through Belanglo, and every time I feel uneasy because I know that there, deep in the forest, there may still be someone we haven't found.